Reading a summary from the Carrera book, laying the foundation for the next 10 sutras. The next 10 sutras lead the very doorstep of self-realization, a state called Dharma Mega Samadhi. In order to achieve it, we need to be able to perceive the distinction between the limited awareness of the individual mind and the unlimited consciousness of the Purusha. Before going on, it will be helpful to review the groundwork that has been prepared for us in these final steps. Pada 3 discussed the siddhis, ways of understanding the relationship of matter to mind, and the supremacy of mind over matter. The beginning of Pada 4 continued the examination of matter by presenting the yogic view of evolution, including reincarnation. Matter was described as having a reality, an evolutionary life, independent of the mind. Evolution was also discussed as it related to the inherent urge and power of Prakriti to express latent potentials. On the more subtle level, the individual mind, the organ of perception, was seen to have the primordial ego, asmita matra, as its basis. The principle of ego as the foundation for the individual minds, along with the other two facets of the mind, manas and buddhi, was introduced in the commentary on Sutra 1.2. Meanwhile, if we examine our past karma as the immediate cause of the circumstance of our life and our experience in it, we will come to understand our life in a more meaningful way. In short, at this point, we should have a good working understanding of matter, cause and effect, and the nature of the mind. 4.17. An object is known or unknown depending on whether or not the mind gets colored. The universe is a series of waves of Prakriti which express as names and forms. The names and forms change appearance during their evolution and then dissolve back into undifferentiated stuff of matter. These movements with Prakriti attract the mind through senses like a snake charmer memorizing a cobra. Perception takes place when an object attracts the attention of the mind through the senses. The senses pass on these impressions to the manas, recording faculty of the mind, which then conveys their presence to the buddhi, discriminative faculty, and amakara, the ego, which claims the impressions as its own. In other words, perception occurs when the mind gets colored by stimuli from the outside world. Subjectively, this experience makes it seem as if the mind has a consciousness of its own. In truth, our individual consciousness is borrowed reflection of the Purusha of the mind. This is analogous to the mirror which can borrow the light of the sun and reflect it into the room. This basic misperception that our mind's own consciousness, which is tantamount to avidya, is what has been preventing us from realizing our true identity as the Purusha. It's just so interesting.
Yeah, it's all that's kind of explaining all what we've been trying to understand. It's like all the coloring that we put onto things, onto our perceptions of things, and then we think that that's what's real because it's our perception, but it's not. And when we recognize that, that brings us closer to our real identity, right? I mean, I think that's what I'm understanding from this. It makes sense to me now that we've read it and we've talked about it. It does make sense, like I kept saying yesterday, but then when I actually think about it in my life, in my real world, that's where it gets a bit muddy. Like what we were talking about yesterday about our perceptions as we look at things, our perception of matter. But that's just our perception of matter, right? But matter does exist without us. Yeah.
I guess I'll read the next one.
Mm-hmm.
The modifications of the mind stuff are always known to the changeless Purusha, who is its Lord. In the previous sutra, we learned that individual perception is dependent on stimulation from outside sources. Therefore, it is neither steady nor comprehensive. This is in stark contrast to the consciousness of the Purusha, which is unchanging and unlimited. The principle here is that changes in the mind stuff are played against a background of pure, still, omnipresent consciousness. The Sanskrit word translated as Lord is Prabhu, which indicates something that comes from first in a lineage, a progenitor. It reminds us that all thought processes come after or are born from Purusha. That Purusha which is unchanging awareness itself, is aware of all of the changes that the mind stuff undergoes. Mental modifications, vrittis, occupy almost all of the mind's time, whether awake, asleep, or dreaming. For perception to occur, contrast is required. For example, most of us have been seated on a train while it waits to pick up and discharges passengers. Next to us is another train, which is also not moving. We look out our window and suddenly notice motion. For a few moments, we are not sure whether it is our train or the other train that is moving. There are two ways to tell if our train is moving. We experience the contrast between sitting still or moving if we feel our bodies being pressed into our seat back, or if we peek through the window and notice the walls of the train moving away from us. Either way, we would perceive that it is our train that is pulling away from the station. In both cases, perception occurs against a contrasting factor.
Mm-hmm.
To take another example, we may decide it is time to repaint our kitchen in the same shade of white we used last time it was painted. As we roll on the new paint, we might have had a hard time telling where we let off, since the colors are the same. We lean this way and that and twist our heads to the side to catch the reflection of the light off the wall. When we distinguish the wet from the dry, we can easily resume painting. Again, we need contrast to have perception. Now let's apply the principle of contrast to the topic of awareness and the ability to perceive. We are aware that we are thinking, that our mind is entertaining thoughts. How do we know? In every aspect of who we were engaged in the thought process. If every aspect of who we were engaged in the thought process, there would be no one to witness it. There has to be some aspect or element that is not thinking, that is not involved in the thought process, but simply witnessing it. That aspect is the Purusha, which is unchanging, unlimited awareness. Sri Patanjali knows that students need to be convinced of truths before accepting them. So in the next 5 sutras, he offers philosophical proofs of the principle presented in this sutra. Oh my God, I feel like everything just made sense to me.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, what's interesting, he talks about contrast, perception requires some kind of change or contrast. And since change is constant, more or less, unless you are frozen in space, it makes a great deal of sense. It also makes sense why you are continuously perceiving things, even when you're asleep. So,
yeah.
I was just thinking, like, of what Sue was saying, of like for me, with teacher training, during teacher training, and then like shortly after, because teacher training was the best self-therapy I could have given to myself. And I just wish it was an offering. I don't know if I would have accepted it years ago, but it came to me at the exact time I was supposed to have it. I just wish that time happened earlier, but we always wish things happened earlier.
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah.
Maybe next life it'll happen to me, 5 years. I'll be 20 something and then 16, you know.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. But after, it's like so much self-discovery when you start learning this stuff, and when you start becoming aware of your thoughts, in the sense that you're like, I don't have to be thinking this. I don't have to believe. And even this stuff we're learning now, like, I can still question and challenge this. I can question and challenge everything I've learned, only because maybe those things didn't sit with me anyway. And then my point is like, sometimes I want to go from this sutra book to the next, and I just want to keep absorbing and learning. And then I overdo it and I crash. You need that moment of pause where you can like take time to journal and be like, how is this really applying to my life? Because you can absorb all of this information but not apply it. And it's the learning to apply it, for me, is like the yoga practice. Otherwise, it's just like educational learning.
Absolutely.
Like,
and applying is the hard part. I mean, understanding it's hard enough, but the applying it is definitely the hard part. You know, I've never journaled. You mentioned that a lot, Pamela, and I've tried it a few times and I just haven't been able to get into it. I always feel self-indulgent when I'm doing it.
I'm not a huge journaler. I wish I journaled more, which is probably why I say it so much, because it's me talking to myself. But occasionally I can't help myself. And like, I do use like my Facebook, like I'll type and I'll post it and I'll share. And that to me is a journal.
Oh,
it's
right.
not so private.
Yeah.
I could, when I was younger, I would journal, but I didn't trust my parents or my sisters to find it. So, you know, like, it's a privacy issue. So then I was limited to what I could put in the journal.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be found.
Right.
One of my best friends journaled, and her mom found it and like destroyed her life. And it was like, you know, a huge trust.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's always stayed with me too. But I do like journaling, and I find it powerful. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
We just read 17 and 18. We're just discussing how, if we just keep reading and educating ourselves on yoga philosophy, but not applying it to the life, then it's just like an education versus a yoga practice, and just finding ways to apply it in our life.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me, 17 and 18 just completely made sense of everything we've been reading. 18 spoke about using contrast to perceive things. So it was saying how our Purusha is the contrast to our mind thoughts, and that's how we know we're thinking.
Yeah. I wonder why they didn't tell us that sooner.
I don't think we were ready for it. Like, just like what I was saying, like, we hear it exactly when we're supposed to hear it. And then we wouldn't have read all the other stuff.
We just didn't process it.
Yeah, he probably did keep telling us it. We were just like ignorant, right? We were like, no, we don't want to believe this.
When I was a kid and I was taking algebra, there was one point in algebra where this teacher, who was actually a fabulous teacher, and in retrospect, I admire her a lot because she was a woman in a man's world, and teaching us dorky middle school students. So anyway, she just stood up and said, well, remember when we learned this a couple of months ago, and you guys, you know, you learned it, everybody seems to understand it, etc. Well, that's not true. It's wrong. And we were all so offended and angry that she would teach us something that wasn't true. And she said, well, you guys weren't ready for this. This is what I really want you to know. But I have to say, we felt betrayed. There was a real sense of betrayal in the class. That's what I remember about my algebra class. And I think the same thing happened, which is, well, yeah, that other thing was there, but we were, we weren't ready for it. We had to go in through the back door and then learn that, no, the back door is wrong. You got to go around through the side door. So.
Right.
I'm going to read 18 from Patanjali. I didn't even check it, but he actually has commentary.
Okay.
Due to its changelessness, changes in the mind stuff are always known to the Purusha, who is its master. Here, Patanjali speaks of the changes in the mind stuff. The chitta constantly changes because that's its natural tendency. Mind is a part of the ever-changing nature. However clever we are, we can only keep the mind quiet for a little while. Therefore, our aim is not to keep the mind peaceful, but to rise above the mind and realize the ever-peaceful self. Purusha is the owner of the mind stuff, or as Patanjali puts it, the master. The Purusha knows all the changes that happen in it. How could Purusha know them if it is also changing? A changing thing cannot recognize the changes in something else, like an insane person cannot recognize the insanity of another person. So Purusha, being changeless, can always recognize the changing nature of the mind. I love how he said that it's not to keep the mind peaceful, but to rise above the mind and realize the ever peaceful self. So it's like, Jackie, when you were sharing earlier, you're like, it's so much easier to say sattvic in summer. It's like you have to remember this feeling. And even though you're not going to be peaceful in the fall, like this is the feeling that you're training yourself to feel. Myself too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, somebody emailed me. I mean, I swear to God, there's this one lady. She's not lady. She's like 20 something woman, which is still a lady, but she just drives me nuts. I think she does it on purpose. And I sent her an email yesterday with the information that she was asking for. And then she wrote back to me, well, can you just send me the information? I'm like, did you even read the email? I emailed it to you. And I wrote back the nastiest thing to her, like, are you serious? And I deleted it. I didn't send it because I'm like, there's a global pandemic going on right now. And like, she's like this before COVID, but I just have to keep ignoring her to keep myself peaceful. And I wasn't feeling peaceful, but I was like trying to rise above it to get myself, because then if I would have put that negativity out there and attacked her, then I would not have continued feeling peaceful. So by like ignoring her, I was like, okay, I can feel peace. I could get over my little anger blip quicker, because then I would have felt, so then my whole day would have been ruined, because I would have been like, I can't believe I sent that email to her. She wouldn't have responded back to me.
Right.
You know, she would have just, I think she just tries to rile. I don't think she's really doing that, but it feels that way.
Yeah.
And it's my whole team, and we just laugh at it. But
yeah,
I'm glad I may have used to send that email, but I'm glad I can like just type it out and then delete it and find my peace again.
So there's your journaling again. You're writing it, but you're not sending it, and you're getting it out of your system, and then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I yesterday I had the same kind of thing. By now my thoughts about my boss, and I volunteered to be on this committee, and she'd said we would have a meeting next week, and I'd emailed her and said, I have other classes that I'm scheduled to be in, if we could schedule around that, but if you can't, it's okay, because I will not go to the other class. This is more important. So she's emailed us yesterday and said that this is so typical of her. Every memo or email we get has to be revised at least twice, because she's so impulsive that she clicks send before she thinks, and then there's mistakes and it has to be revised, and it drives me insane. We get memos with schedules and things at work, and I have learned to put it aside, because there'll be a second one and maybe a third one before it's actually correct. And so in true fashion, yesterday the email said that we would see you next Thursday, but then the date and time for the Zoom meeting was not next Thursday. And I was just like, I said to my husband, so I'm just going to wait. I didn't even put it in my calendar because I'm just going to wait for the second email to correct the first one. I'm not going to get myself all like, oh, here she goes again. She can't even make a meeting. Yeah. No, and we did. By the evening, we got the second email with a new date, which is not a Thursday. So I'm not sure if it's correct either, but but
Well, after reading this sutra, like I think that, and we were saying like, oh, why didn't he just tell us this sooner? Like, I don't think I would have trusted this sutra hearing it earlier. Like this time around reading it, like I can really grasp what Purusha is to me, and like the whole idea of the God or the universe unicorn or whatever energy you want to call that. I could really grasp it this time around, and now I have a little bit more trust in it than I would have if you told me this in Sutra 1.3, you know, at the beginning. I would have been like, but what is it? Like, still, what is it? It would have been like a foreign concept to me.
Yeah.
And so if it's still not sitting with you now, maybe next time you read the whole sutras. I mean, this is my third time reading through it, but not ever in this level of detail. Like I probably just skimmed through these parts because they were so, but it's so nice like being able to like bounce ideas and talk it out to figure it out.
Yeah.
Be able to learn a lot more this time around.
I remember my brother saying to me, oh my gosh, now this was, I think before my children were born. This was a long time ago. He said to me that God is in you. God is part of you. You are God. And I kind of said, well, I don't know that I can get there. I can work to add another O in there and say good. I can work to say that I am good. I'm trying to be a good person. I can work with that. And he laughed and he let it go. And God, that must have been my oldest son's 23. So that was a long, long time ago that he said that. And now, I'm like, gosh, he told me that a long time ago. That divine, it's a piece of divine within each one of us. It's in all of us. It's there within all of us, and you just have to look.
But isn't it sad that we are? I'll just say me. Isn't it sad that like I was born already feeling that I wasn't within, like that I already didn't have the divine in me.
Yeah.
Like, or maybe I did feel that way, but then my protectors, my teachers, my parents didn't keep teaching that lesson to me because they didn't know it themselves. So how are they supposed to teach it to me? But that It's destroying our humanity. That from birth, our self-esteem and our self-worth is being stripped from us, basically. And it's not being taught to us that young. Like, who cares if you know the alphabet if you're not a good person?
Yeah.
Or if you don't love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But like these 3-year-olds are learning Mandarin, whatever, they know algebra, but they don't even like themselves.
Yes.
Because it's being stripped from us. Meanwhile, it's always there. And when somebody, like, I would be like, no, you know, I mean, I had good self-esteem growing up, and I always believed something was there. I just didn't know what it was. And instead of someone educating me, they would just be like, well, you're an atheist because you don't go to Catholic church. So end of story. Like, it was no black or what, you know, it was never like, oh, well, maybe this is your path, or this is what, maybe try this instead. No, it was just like, this is you. Let's label you and put you in this box and close the box and you'll sit there.
Yeah.
So But it's like you're saying, Jackie, it's like the whole idea where I felt like a troublemaker because I didn't want to go to church on Sunday, but I was just standing up for what I believed in. I did not feel comfortable there. I didn't like the learnings or the teachings or whatever. And so I stopped going. And I was looked at as like a troublemaker because I was just like a middle school child being stubborn.
Right.
So, and there's something to be said for children that are stubborn and like you do like somebody that enrolls in something but then quits, you know, like, but my parents never even put me in Sunday school. So it's kind of just like, here, come sit here and listen because whatever, it wasn't done properly for me. But if anyone wants to share anything else, otherwise we'll move into breath and meditation. On this rainy Friday.
On this rainy Friday.
Well, I don't think it's going to rain all day. Well, that's what the weather thing says, but who knows? I'm not saying I don't think it's going to rain all day because I have superpowers to know the weather.
And it certainly looks right now like it's going to keep raining.
I know.
It does, but you never know.
If you do have superpowers, I need to weed this afternoon, so please make it stop at around 12 or so. Thanks.
Well, can we just send positive vibes out there? Because last year they called for a very heavy hurricane season, and they were right. It's already on letter I, and one was over Hawaii and Texas, and now one's heading for our coast, and our world does not need people moving into shelters and dealing with devastation. So
Okay.
let's send some positive vibes out there for 2020 hurricane season. This is the earliest we've gotten to I in August. And when I say I they've named that tropical storms and hurricanes in alphabetical order.
Right, yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so if you need something to focus on today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do. Okay.
All right, so setting up in a comfortable seat, taking a few breaths in through the nose. And then setting up for alternate nostril breathing. Now close your right nostril. Inhale left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Inhale left. Close, exhale right. Inhale right. Close, exhale left. 3 more rounds on your own breath. You'll take your time to finish exhaling out through the left nostril, and I'll set the timer for 20 minutes. Bringing hands together in front of your heart. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Hope you get to weed later.
Thank you.
And Jackie gets her walk in.
Yeah.
baby. Let's all do the good things outside.
Yes.
And maybe Isabella gets to go jump in puddles or something.
Yeah. Well, that's fun too. You can always hose them down outside. That was my principle.
Yep.
All right. Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye.